Napoleon Bonaparte, the life of a revolutionary icon. Napoleon Bonaparte shines as a prominent figure in both France and Europe. His feats in the French Revolutionary Wars and the Napoleonic Wars left a profound impact worldwide. Dominating much of Europe until his defeat in 1815, Napoleon's strategic brilliance and military tactics continue to influence contemporary warfare scenes. Let's delve into the games of Europe and take a glimpse into the life of Napoleon Bonaparte. Born on August 15, 1769, in the modest Bonaparte family on the island of Corsica in France, Napoleon opened his eyes to the world. Raised under the stern upbringing of his disciplined mother, Napoleon went on to receive a rigorous education. When it was time to go to school, he traveled to France with his brother, where he began his military training. Despite occasional teasing during his school days, Napoleon excelled in his studies, largely indifferent to such mockery. Shortly after graduating from the class of his choice, Napoleon entered a challenging period. After a long and bloody war with Britain, the country faced economic decline. During this time, the economic crisis not only impoverished the people, but also left the clergy and the bourgeoisie, along with other high-ranking individuals, still leading comfortable lives, while the French population struggled to even find basic necessities. Unable to endure any longer, the people revolted throughout the country in 1789, leading to the overthrow of the monarchy through significant efforts. And in its place, they established a republic regime. After the revolution, the major powers in Europe, fearing the spread of this situation to their own countries due to the dethroning of the king, went to war with France. In this chaotic environment, Napoleon would rise to prominence. He was tasked with reclaiming the city of Thola, which had been occupied by England and Spain. Despite lacking in soldiers and equipment, he utilized his leadership and military brilliance to successfully recapture the city. Napoleon's abilities impressed the new government so much that at the age of just 23, he was promoted to the rank of brigadier general. However, things were still not going well in France. The country was going through a period known as the Reign of Terror. During this time, anyone opposing the government had their heads severed. Following this, the government changed again, and due to Napoleon's positive relations with the former government, he was sent to prison. After realizing his reputation had been tarnished upon his release from prison, Napoleon began patiently waiting for opportunities to rise again. These opportunities presented themselves sooner than expected. The Ottoman Empire had requested a delegation from France to train artillery units in Istanbul. Napoleon applied to the government to go to Istanbul, but his request was rejected. However, during the same period, uprisings erupted among the monarchy supporters on the streets of Paris, putting the government in an intractable situation. As gang wars and conflicts with security forces continued, Napoleon was tasked with suppressing the uprisings upon the government's call. Supported by hidden cannons in Paris, Napoleon ruthlessly quelled the uprising of the French people. These events provided Napoleon with the opportunity to rise again and restore his reputation. The uprising that even the French army couldn't suppress, Napoleon managed to quell in just one day. England formed a coalition alliance against France, which included Prussia, Austria, Spain, and England. Initially, France advanced by seizing Belgium, reaching as far as the Netherlands. Later, peace treaties were signed with Spain and Prussia. Subsequently, attempts to attack Austria from three fronts failed. Napoleon, who achieved incredible successes in Italy, winning a total of 18 pitched battles, expelled Austria completely from Italy and reached as far as Vienna. Austria had to withdraw and sign a peace treaty with France. Napoleon had single-handedly defeated Austria. Upon his return to France, Napoleon became immensely popular among the people. The public hailed him as the hero of France, showering him with praise. However, Napoleon wanted more. Through the taxes collected during the Italian campaign, he provided financial resources to the government and gained political power. Despite significant victories against coalition governments, France still couldn't eliminate Britain. When Napoleon returned to France, he was assigned a new mission: to launch an invasion against Britain. However, Napoleon opposed this. France did not have enough ships or the funds to purchase them to conduct an invasion of Britain. Napoleon came up with a new idea to cut off the colonial roots of England. He proposed the occupation of Egypt, and the government approved this idea. A ship was arranged and Napoleon was sent to Egypt. While en route, encountering British patrol ships, Napoleon sent these ships to the depths of the sea and landed in Cairo. Shortly thereafter, he completely occupied Egypt. He managed to deceive the people of Egypt by claiming that he was a Muslim. However, during his actions in Egypt, Napoleon received bad news. The fleet anchored in Egypt had been set on fire. Napoleon was trapped in Egypt. Furthermore, when the people of Egypt learned that Napoleon was not a Muslim and had come to colonize Egypt, they began to revolt against him. Napoleon suppressed these uprisings in a very harsh manner. Afterward, he turned his attention to Palestine. His goal was to seize India, which was under British colonial rule. He entered the city of Jaffa with his forces, putting to the sword approximately 10,000 soldiers and civilians. During the campaign, Napoleon received troubling news. France had suffered a severe defeat against the armies of England and the coalition, prompting a recall for Napoleon to return to France. After these defeats, Napoleon returned to France and initiated a coup against the government, successfully overthrowing it. The new government was divided into a triumvirate, with Napoleon Bonaparte as the first consul. Meanwhile, the war continued in Italy. Napoleon took command of the armies which were separated from Paris and put an end to the war in Italy. After returning to Paris following the war, Napoleon initiated political reforms. He first established the central bank and opened officer schools. In 1804, he declared himself emperor. The uprising, which began in the pursuit of equality and freedom, witnessed the periods of terror and dictatorship. With the restoration of the monarchy, the French Empire was established, leading to significant discontent against Napoleon. Initially, he completely severed ties with his mother, and then his officers, who were supporters of Napoleon, turned away from him entirely. However, revolutionaries were among those who expressed the strongest opposition. While dealing with internal turmoil, Napoleon also had to contend with the coalition forces led by the reassembled England. He was almost at war with all of Europe. Yet, leveraging his military genius, Napoleon repeatedly defeated the Allied forces. His victories were so numerous that he nearly brought all of Europe under his dominion. A significant treaty was also signed with the Russians. According to the treaty, Russians were to terminate all alliances with the British and enter into an alliance with France. This dealt a severe blow to Britain, but it was not yet the end. Napoleon sought to completely end the war and annihilate Britain. First, he appointed family members to lead the puppet governments he had established in Europe. Then, he imposed an embargo on trade with Britain through these governments. There would come a time when Britain would be forced to struggle with famine. In this case, it would inevitably sign a peace treaty with France. However, Napoleon encountered a problem. Despite having signed a treaty with France, the Russians were not adhering to it. They were still collaborating with the British and consistently providing material and food assistance to Britain. Napoleon became furious upon learning this. Initially, he warned the Tsar, but when the Tsar disregarded it, Napoleon decided not to march towards Moscow. Using the pretext of the Russians attacking Poland with his colossal army of 850,000. This would turn out to be Napoleon's greatest mistake. Napoleon had initiated attacks through Poland. In the battles against the Russians, he was progressing with increasing victories each passing day. Napoleon had now entered a path of no return. Either Russia would fall or he would have to return to France. Napoleon chose to push further, despite the poisonous allure of power he was experiencing. The Russians, employing a tactic of burning the areas they lost, were retreating even further. Due to this strategy, the French armies would find themselves confronted with starvation and defeat. Napoleon had finally reached Moscow, but upon arrival, instead of the expected welcome, he found a city in ruins and devastation. There was not even a place for the soldiers to lodge. The Russian army had retreated into the heart of Russia, waiting for Napoleon to be defeated by their generals. Winter. Napoleon had to contend with the coldest winter of the 19th century. There was no place for his soldiers to lodge. The only solution was to return to France. However, upon his return, he had lost 3/4 of his army. After this defeat, the reassembled coalition army began to attack France. Napoleon, relinquishing his throne, was exiled to the island of St. Helena by the British. 9 months later, he aligned himself with the French soldiers who had come to retrieve him and set out towards France. Upon setting foot on French soil, the armies that had come to stop Napoleon joined his service. When Napoleon landed in France, he was remembered as a traitor. Giving one last boost to the army in Waterloo, Napoleon faced the coalition states. However, overwhelmed by the numerical superiority of the coalition states, Napoleon suffered a heavy defeat. After the war, although Napoleon tried to escape to America, he was captured and sent into exile once again. On May 5, 1821, at the age of 50, he succumbed to stomach cancer. I hope you enjoyed watching this video. If you liked it, don't forget to hit the like button and consider subscribing to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications to stay updated on our latest videos. We can't wait to share more content with you. Thank you for your interest and support.